so thankful you're here, and I know we're going to have a ton of fun.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Thanks for having me, Stacey.
Yeah, I was thinking the first time I met you was the Let's Go workshop. I think it was the very first one in 2016.
It was, yeah.
2016, like life changing since then. I feel like for so many of us that we met there, and just watching everybody, their growth and like personal life stuff. Like I know my life is completely different than it was in 2016. And for me, that was such a pivotal event, was the Let's Go workshop, and the people that I met there and that were inspired by, and just like to have the confidence to go for it. It was insane.
Yeah, that's super cool. I know it's bizarre to look back and think that there's been like, what, 5 years of this now. And like the community group just keeps growing. And I was thinking about that the other day. I'm like, there's like 150 people in there. Like, it's just, I love watching everybody just like start new businesses and win awards and like go on to just do these crazy things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like I remember just getting drunk and doing karaoke with you. Like,
you were like showing up and being like, everyone's like a little bit nervous and scared, and they show up at the door, and you guys were so welcoming and like hugged everybody. And
that's always like anybody I get to speak, like anybody that I invite to come like into the family, I'm like, all right, here's the ground rules. Like, you have to be like, you have to hug everybody, you have to love on everybody, because like, I'm just really, I mean, with Let's Go, and you know this because you've been there, but I'm really just trying to like kind of break down that stereotype of like the educators and the students, and that there's this weird like divide, like we're all equal, we're all doing the same thing. There's nothing, you know, we're all just like one big part of this community. And yeah.
You guys have just exploded too. I feel like I see any kind of workshop recommendation, you guys are always on there, and I always hear amazing things. Like, what made you start it, and then how has it evolved in the last 4 or 5 years?
Okay, so this is a whole story all on its own. I don't know if we have time, because why I started it. So, okay, so like back in.
Wait, is it too late? Is it too early for beer? Is that something you could do?
Never.
Or wine?
No, have one. I'm still drinking coffee because it's only one over here. So.
All right. Well, I'll stick with my water then for now. So, I was like, is this like the moment where we crack one, or no?
Oh gosh. I mean, it is a drinking story though, for sure. I mean, I won't like spill too much tea. I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but like, you know, there are definitely reasons why I was so passionate about starting this workshop. And honestly, it really does start like back in, I think 2015, or maybe even a little bit before that. But like, remember when like workshops really started taking off and everybody was having them, and it was just like, it was kind of this like, people weren't really talking about what was going on behind the scenes. Like you could tell that maybe like they were a little unhappy, but nothing was ever really being said about it. And then in 2015, I kind of somehow, I don't know how, but I somehow landed on like the speaking circuit. So I was kind of asked to go speak at other workshops and a few conferences, and like, still don't know how that happened, but.
And it was about Instagram, right?
Yeah, it was always social media. When I first started speaking, I was talking about like how to grow your social media, like how to, you know, brand and market on different platforms and stuff. And that was kind of like my niche topic, I guess, at the time. And so I found myself kind of on like the speaker circuit, and there, like, I was meeting a ton of people, and kind of just in building those relationships and networking, I was like, you know, tell me about other workshops you've been to, you know, I'd love to hear your experiences, because I was always wanting to improve as an educator. So I wanted to kind of see like what worked, what didn't work. And the more I was talking to people, the more I was just hearing like heartbreaking stories about people spending $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to go to some workshop put on by their favorite photographer, and then they go and it's just terrible. You know, they're starving for 3 days, or they have to sleep on the ground somewhere, or, you know, they didn't get any education that they pay for. And like, this is like small business owners, like we don't have a lot of extra money, you know, to just like throw at these workshops. Like if somebody's promising to help you grow your business, you're really you know, the naivety, especially of like a brand new photographer,
Yeah.
like trying to get, you know, make a go of it. And then they just are out all this money. It's devastating. And I've heard of people that have like quit, like just flat out quit because of a bad workshop experience. And so
they quit the industry.
Yeah. Yep. They just absolutely, cause you know, maybe it was like, maybe they had saved their last few dollars. Maybe they met their idol, and it was like this whole, you know, so it just, I was hearing story after story after story. And then I was experiencing some of those things at some of the workshops I was at. Like I was seeing people go hungry. I was seeing promises not being met. And I was like mortified to be a part of, you know, one of the speakers at some of these workshops. And I remember just going home and being like, this is unacceptable. There is no accountability in the industry, because anybody can rent a place and throw some tickets up on the internet and sell, you know, a workshop, and just, it's a cash grab, you know, and that was happening. But the problem is that, like I said, nobody was talking about it because they were scared of their idols. They were scared of these people that had huge, you know, reach on their platforms. And there was no accountability. There was no place to go leave a review. There was no place to go share your experience. And, you know, like I think of it as like, if it was a photographer that did that was treating their clients that way, oh my gosh, like
It'd be everywhere.
Yeah, their business would be done, you know. But because it was really the leaders of the industry, not all of them, but you know what I mean? And there was enough that like kind of we're spoiling, you know, a lot of people's like opinions of workshops. And I just was like, this can't happen anymore. Education in our industry needs to be held to a higher standard. And so you might have seen this. This went really viral. I put together this like an anonymous survey. Did you see this?
I did. This is like part of the stuff where I'm like, I feel like you're a bit of a whistleblower in our industry.
Yeah, I felt like, I was like, oh no. Yeah. So I was just like, you know what? I want to give people a voice. And I know that a lot of people are not comfortable doing it themselves. So I'll create an anonymous platform where people can go and just kind of post some of the things that they've been.
That must have been so much work on your end to do that.
You know, it was, but it was like the off-season. I think it was like January of 2015 or something when I did this. But, and then of course, you know, like as the stories are coming in, I'm just like, what, how, like it was worse than I could have even ever imagined. And, I didn't know what to do with the data because I had got hundreds of surveys that people had filled out, and like,
it's a lot of responsibility.
Yeah. And they were name dropping, and I was like, I can't, like, I wasn't there, so this is not my personal experience. I don't feel like I'm not gonna out these people without, I can't fact check this. How do I know? Like, this is just one person's, you know, side of the story. And I wasn't about to, you know, come after like some heavy hitters. So I was just like, okay, I finally decided what to do. And I decided to write just like a think piece, just like an article about workshops in the industry and how they needed to be held to a higher standard. And I just used I just pulled quotes from different people's surveys without naming anybody. Still pissed a lot of people off though, but you know, that, like, in my opinion, I was like, if you're getting pissed, you're probably doing something wrong. Like, you're probably part of the problem. So I came out with that article, and it was really cool because Junebug Weddings, they had their like best of workshop and conferences list. Mm-hmm. But at that time, it was just a directory. Like, they were listing all workshops and conferences. And then after my article came out, like, I talked to the Junebug girls, and they were like, you know what, we really want to come on board with this. Like, we feel like we have, you know, a platform to like kind of help, you know, like help push.
They probably feel like it's also part of their responsibility as well, as being also a leader in the industry. And
yeah, absolutely. So they completely changed the way they did the whole best of workshops and conferences. And so now it's like it has to be nominated. It has to be like official. You know, you need to have a website. You need to have reviews. It can't be your first one ever. That was a big one too, because like, you know, you kind of need proof of concept. You need to hear people, you know. So anyways, it was kind of at that time, like I was just also getting started with my workshop, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm coming out and trying to be this like voice of like what the standard should be, I have to like step it up and really, you know, show people kind of like the experience that they should be getting. And so because of that, I've just always like put so much care into the educators that I invite, the experience in general, like really just investing so much back into the students. I'm working on a reunion now, like
I saw. My girlfriend that I went there with was like, we have to go.
I did see that. Yeah. So I'm like booking the place, like, and it'll just be kind of like a hangout, but it's because like we become a family, you know, and like I don't want to just be one of those educators that like takes your money, teaches you a thing, and then vanishes. Like I want to be part of your life and your growth and your, you know, your business, like for years to come. And yeah, so that's why I started the workshop, because I just felt like there were things that needed, you know, people needed to know about. And I feel like, and I could be wrong, but I feel like since that happened, since I came out with that article, like people were scared. Like people that run workshops were like, uh-oh.
I better do like a good job of what I promised and deliver.
Yeah. And I've had people message me like throughout the last few years that have said like, I read your thing and like, it's the reason why, you know, I put more effort into my education now. And, you know, like I was scared to run a workshop because I didn't want you to come after me. I'm like, that's not like,
anyone that knows you, know, like you're so supportive and you're kind and you're doing it for the right reasons, not because like I'm coming after you.
No. And that was like, I mean, I didn't want to like scare people away, but I did want people to know like, hey, listen, we have now collectively as a community decided that this is not okay. And if this happens, like we're going to talk about it. And so I'm sure you saw this too, but last year I spoke at a workshop that was really bad. And
I did see that one too.
Okay. So like in 2015 or 16, whenever I wrote the article, I like made this pledge to my community. And like, I take this stuff very seriously. So I was like, I promise to you guys that I will vet any like opportunity I have in the future. I will not, you know, I will not speak at workshops that are going to be, you know, like subpar, because I'm trying to hold myself to a certain standard. And unfortunately, there was a workshop last year that I felt like I vetted. I felt like I did my due diligence and like tried to, you know, like the company that was running it was very well known, very respected. They have a magazine, like they have a great reputation. And I agreed to be part of this workshop, and I went, and it was really terrible. And I had to come back after it was over and write another article and say like, listen guys, I screwed up because I was part of this thing and here's what happened. And yikes, that was a time.
Like what happened? Like how did it go from sounding so promising to not being good?
What they were trying to do was really incredible. I was really excited because I thought it was a really fresh approach to education, and I was really excited to be part of it. And they had a lot of really like wonderful people on board. And I think I just kind of got caught up in like, well, if this person said yes, it must be incredible. And then, you know, it's kind of this cycle because people thought that about me. Well, if she's going to be there. And then I felt so guilty because I'm promoting this event and people are paying money because they now trust my, you know, my recommendation. And I felt so guilty because I was like, I feel like I was part of the reason why people, you know, had this experience. And it was It was rough. And I don't know. I think that it was their first one. So back to what I was saying earlier, I think that could have been a thing I recognized as just like, hey, I should probably sit one out and see how it goes first. Because it's a
huge learning curve, I'm sure.
Absolutely. And they just went way too big for their first one. I think that was like really what it all boils down to, is it was a great concept, but it was way too big. And it was it was probably a management nightmare. I mean, organization was terrible. People were getting lost. Like it just,
oh no.
Yeah. And,
That's the worst.
So I think that's what it came down to, is just, it was way too big.
It's actually very brave. It's a very brave thing to speak your mind, and whether everyone's going to agree with you or not agree with you. And like, that's not even the point, is having people agree, but just the fact that you're expressing your opinion.
I mean, I sent the article that I wrote to a ton of people. I was like, please read this. Like, am I totally going to sabotage my career? Like, am I done with? And I just had a lot of support from a lot of my friends, and people just saying like, hey, like, we have your back if things go wrong, because things can happen. I mean, the internet's a scary place, people can come after you. And I definitely got a lot of hate from it, but I had way more support and people that were thankful for me, like continuing to kind of keep the industry.
I was going to say, I'm sure like people are now relying on you to also be able to step up and say those things.
And I feel like once one person comes forward, it kind of gives everybody else like a little bit more permission to kind of like, oh, okay, well, if they're gonna be on the front line, like, then I'll also share my story. And that was the big shock for me when I wrote this second article, was how many other people came forward to share their stories. And I was like, okay, this is a little bit harder to deny when there's 100 people, sharing the same stories.
I think that still going to these workshops and the people that you meet, you learn just as much from them as you do from the educators. And then having those personal relationships and making real friendships, and that you have that support, that you're not alone, because it can be really lonely being a solopreneur. But having people that you can communicate with and maybe like go and see outside of a workshop, or even if it's just on social media, like bounce ideas off of, and just like, be excited for each other, and you don't feel alone. But also it is still really good for referrals.
Yeah.
And still education and learning off each other. Just like, it's ongoing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, for me, like, it's absolutely 100% about the relationships. Like, for me, success, I mean, obviously there's like the financial element. I need to make enough to pay my bills. But for me, like, I don't have an extravagant life. I don't need fancy new things or clothes or whatever all the time. Like, I need enough to survive and, give my daughter a good life. Like, that's, for me, as long as I have enough for that, like, that's considered success for me. But it's more about the relationships. It really is. And seeing other people, like, to know that I've been part of, and even if it's just been a small way, to be part of somebody like being able to quit their 9-to-5 that they hate, or being able to take the step and run their own business and like fulfill a lifelong dream. Like, to be part of that journey for somebody is like, it's all I ever want. Like, it's the most humbling and exciting thing. And I just love it. It's so cool. It's so cool to see. And then from a selfish perspective, I mean, the friends that I've made through Let's Go alone, like outside of the industry and just Let's Go, these are like my people. I mean, some of my closest, dearest friends on the planet. I mean, I went through a brutal divorce a couple years ago, and like, these were the people that I was, that would call me at 2 a.m. and just, be there for me during my worst times. And you don't find that anymore.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry. I got stuck in the divorce. I'm sure anyone that's watched a PepperCast before, like, it's like come up here and there for me too. But I went through a divorce shortly after Let's Go, maybe like a year later, and brutal, awful. It changed my entire life. But that makes me want to cry because I feel like without my friends in the industry and it's happening.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I don't know what I would have done.
I know, it's bizarre. And like, oh man, it's crazy. And like, not to mention the fact that like, we just kind of get each other. And I've worked 9-to-5s. I've worked in the professional world, and I've never built relationships like that in anything else I've ever done in life. And like, I don't know whether it's just because we're all like weird, like artist types, or like, we're just like I don't know what it is, but it's friggin' magical.
I had some friends before. I have either like very lifelong friends, like since childhood and babyhood, basically. But as an adult, I had a hard time making like close friends, acquaintances, sure, but like really close friends. It didn't happen for me until I started photography.
I feel like my friends outside of photography, like they just don't get, they don't understand what I do, you know? And like, that's always kind of hard too, because it's like hard to explain. Like it looks like we don't do anything, right?
Like, you must love your job because you get to take pictures all day. I'm like, that's the smallest part of what I do.
No. Or like the other, I remember I was like kind of dating somebody at one point, and like I was like, I'm checking emails and I'm like social media, you know, and then they're like, you're so addicted to your phone. Like what's the problem? You know, I'm like, oh, I mean, this is why I have a job. Like this is me
job. Working. This is me working right now. I feel like your timeline with like, let's go, divorce, and I mean, baby, amazing. How do you see your life as an entrepreneur? How do those big life changing moments and situations, what like good, bad, all those things, has shaped who you are now as an artist and as an entrepreneur?
Absolutely everything. I just like, okay, so when I was married, like my ex-husband and I, we were like primarily, I mean, we still ran the workshop, but it was primarily photography, which, I mean, obviously we are photographers, that's what we do. But that was like more of the focus of the business. It was like probably 80-20 at that time, like 80% photography. And that's why I was, again, only doing like the one workshop a year. Because it just wasn't, you know, like my main focus. And then after the divorce, like weddings, like let's.
It's so hard. It's so hard. Like I'm just not. Yeah.
Like let's be honest, it's rough. Like I've loved my clients. I'm like, but it's triggering. It's hard to just feel that same way about it. And maybe it's because I'm just like a bitter old divorcee. I don't know.
It was less the shooting of and like less the day of and more the editing afterwards. That was hard.
Yeah, totally. Like, yes. Oh man, completely relate. Absolutely. So once that happened, that was in the beginning of last year. I was just like, I don't want to be primarily weddings anymore, because this is hard. And like even now, a year and a half later, I'm still just like, I just don't have that same love for weddings, and I don't think I'll ever get it back, you know. I'm a different person. I'm a totally different person now. And so it was because of that I had this big shift and decided like, I'm going to really focus more on education. And there may be, because like, I understand totally that like, I've cut way back on weddings. I only did 6 last year. I've only got a couple this year. That's all I wanted to do. And I completely understand that I might like just kind of age out of the, like,
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing like, and I do hear other people that are transitioning out of weddings. Like if you still love weddings, you want to do them forever. I mean, that's freaking awesome. But there's nothing wrong with saying like, I want to transition out of weddings. Like I had my time. I loved it. I enjoyed it, but I'm ready for the next thing.
And for me, that really was like putting more of my heart into education. And so, transitioning, but this is, I guess what I'm getting back to is that like, I know that my time as an educator might be limited because I'm not a wedding photographer anymore. So it's kind of like, well, what do you know? You don't even like shoot weddings, you know? And I'm not, I mean, other, like, just as you know, I mean, we've been in this industry long enough to see like people's popularity rise and then fall. And that's just what happens, you know, as time goes on. And I'm going to try to just like stay on it as long as, you know, as long as I can. But probably I think by the end of this year, so for 2021, God, it seems so weird to like already think about.
So insane.
Next year. But I definitely like, I still want to have the workshop and the educational content. I just don't necessarily know if I will be
teaching it.
Yeah, because
like organizing it, bringing the people together.
Absolutely, because that is what it really is about for me. It's about like creating this experience, and like I don't need to be the one teaching. I have a lot to say right now, but that information, you know, might be irrelevant in a year. I mean, even talking about like, you know, educating people about how to use different softwares or programs. I mean, that stuff changes so much. And if I'm not doing it all the time.
Things change so quickly. And I'm like, sure, you're like starting off being an educator about social media primarily to start like with your speaking, and how much that has changed.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if I'm just not in it doing the daily grind, then, you know, I'm kind of going to lose that knowledge of like what these people are actually doing daily. And when that happens, I'll just step back and I'll just run the event, and I'll bring in people that like really are on top of their game. And I'm totally cool with that. Like, it doesn't need to be me. I don't care. Like, I just want to have the events and still be a part of people's like growth as, you know, business owners. So
that's how I feel about Pepper. I don't know all the things that we do. Like, I know obviously the things that we do, but I don't know them in depth, or I'm not an expert in all of them, but I have people on the team that's what they're experts in. That's what they're amazing at. And yeah, I don't know all the things perfectly.
Yeah. And, you know, we don't need to. Like, you've got a killer team. You guys are killing it.
It's been amazing. It's been insane. It's been so crazy. We have a wait list that I'm hoping to get to by like the end of March.
Wow. Good for you. Oh, I love that. That's so cool.
So talking about social media, I want to talk about your Instagram.
Oh gosh.
I'm sure like everyone wants to know and like has talked to you or asked you about it, but like you had this beautiful feed with all your wedding photos, and you deleted everything, which is like that is brave. That is like, you know, it's scary for people just to like add different components to their feed because it can be so curated. Yeah. You know, it gets really scary for people. And then you didn't just delete it once, you deleted it twice completely, right?
Yeah. So, and it is crazy because like, I remember back to my early days, you know, as an educator. And like, I remember telling people like, cohesive feeds, your lines need to line up. Like,
I remember like the mountains having to like,
I would like it was so tedious. Like that was my whole life. Like that was literally my whole life. And yes, like it really was the catalyst to get me to where I am today. But like, whoa, that's bizarre. And I don't know, just obviously like I went through the divorce, and a lot of the content that was on my Instagram at that time was from stuff my ex and I had done together. And I was like, I don't want to look at this shit anymore. Like,
it's done. You're like, this is in the past.
And like, I knew, like, again, I'm texting my photographer friends and I'm like, is this career suicide? Am I a fucking idiot? Like, should I delete? Like, and everyone going, don't delete it. Like, what is wrong with you? I'm like, I just can't look at it. It's too much. Like, I'm looking at my feed and I'm saying like, oh, this is a trip we went, you know, to here, like, I'm done. So I just deleted everything and started over. And at that time, like the first time I started over, I was like my divorce was just final. I was like really in this like dark, like edgy, artistic.
And the photos were really like, I mean, they were beautiful. I'm a little sad to see that go because I was like, those are gorgeous.
I know. I know. I loved some of that, a lot of that like art. So I went to, well, you know, Jacob Loafman, of course, my brother, my like the OG, let's go, like
amazing human
speaker. He's been with me since day one. But I went to one of his like workshops. He just had a small one-day workshop in Portland, and it was all about like telling a story through like a character, creating a character and telling a short story.
So cool.
And I did this project like after his workshop, and I was like, oh, this is going to be the foundation for my new brand. It's this like really, you know, dark and moody and edgy. And it was like in that period of my life, that was so important. Like that project and that like that space that I was in, that creative space that I was in, like it was healing, which is crazy to think, but I really needed that in that time. And what happened was, as I moved through the like stages of grief, I guess, if you will,
ongoing. I
know.
I don't think
it's still a mess. It's fine.
Yeah, don't worry. Sorry to interrupt. I'm like,
no, you're totally right. But like, as I moved out of that like darker space and into like a much lighter, happier space, I didn't relate to that content that I had made. I didn't relate to that dark stuff anymore. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't who I am anymore either. Like, I'm a fucking mess. Like, what's happening? So I was just like, you know what? I'm just kind of done playing this social media game and trying to have everything curated and have everything like be focused on my professional work. And I'm going to go back to what I was doing when I very first started Instagram. And that's just like posting garbage, like from like,
I was looking at it. Like it's very personal still. It's fun. It's playful. It's like you're cool and we want to hang out with you.
Yeah, I just like downloaded that Hooji Cam app, you know, the one that looks like an Instax filter or whatever. And I'm just like, oh, I'm not even gonna edit anything anymore. Like it's gonna be whatever. And now it's kind of cool because it's like, instead of taking a week to post something because the lines match up, I can be like, hey, this is where I actually am right now, you know? And it's like
actually what Instagram was originally.
Yeah. Do you remember? Like you couldn't upload photos. You had to take it and then post it.
Yeah. Tell people that follow you, like, what would you kind of like your new or like your current phase of how you would give advice for social media or especially Instagram? Well, because I feel like it has been a cycle.
So this one's hard because there's like the business side of my brain that's like, you got to book clients, you know, you need to share what you want to shoot, you know, you need to be smart. But then there's like the me part of my brain that's like, fuck it, who cares? Like, just be who you are and post what you want and it doesn't matter. And if your clients like you, they're going to want to hire you. Like
they have like a mix of like your work and yourself.
Yeah. So that one's tough. And I always go back and forth, but I guess it just depends where you are in your business. You know, if you're still really like needing to use Instagram to get a lot of clients, like, and also too, like, so this was a conversation I had on, you know, over my DMs the other day is there's like, it's a really popular, well-known, established photographer. And she was saying like, I want to delete stuff and just post more personal work. But I'm not going to get any clients. And I'm like, what about your website? Like, what about your SEO? You know, like, what about like,
yes.
you know, yes. Instagram could go away tomorrow. Like we don't own anything of our own content that's on Instagram, and the algorithm changes, like they get bought out, who knows, like vanishes. So really all your eggs should never be in like the social media basket.
The number one way people are still getting bookings or inquiries, the number one way in like a statistic point of view is word of mouth. It's still word of mouth, and it's still goes back to relationships, whether it's vendor relationships that you have and you're getting referrals from them or your peers or from past clients. 100% is still word of mouth. And then it is actually SEO and people finding you Google search.
Yep.
And then it's social media.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like for people that are still on that social media, like grind, you know, like what do I post? What's my caption? Like your time could be so much better spent, you know, somewhere else. And I love that you brought up referrals and networking and vendor relationships, because like I see that, oh man, like in the Facebook group, you know, like the photography Facebook groups where they're just like, I'm not going to give the florist my photos. She can buy them. Those are my photos. I'm like, what's wrong with you? That florist is going to send you clients. Like,
that's insane. That's insane. You're like, please share my images. Please use them. Like, I love working with you. And I know photographers, their number one way that they get referrals, and they're booked all the time. They're fucking amazing. It's through their florists that they have relationships with. It is actually through their florists.
Absolutely. But like, there's still this idea that we need to like keep everything so like, you know, under lock and key, and like, oh, if they're going to use it to advertise themselves and they need to pay me, like, that's my stuff. And it's like, who cares, man? You get one wedding and like, it's worth that in, you know, tenfold, not to mention the relationship that you have. Like, we're all out there trying to do the same thing. Right?
Yes. Yes. And like at a wedding, on a wedding day, if the vendors, if you're all on the same team,
yeah,
everything's going to be so much better. I do feel like, and I hope people disagree with me, and I hope people like message me after this, but I feel like in the photography industry still, the commercial side of the industry is very like closed, and really like it's hard to find information. I find like the education part of the commercial industry is like, where do you find it? Where do you find it? Who's going to share it with you? And then like, can you engage and create relationships with other people in the commercial industry unless you're already like connected to it somehow, or like, you know, someone specifically in it. But if you were 100% a wedding photographer and you want to transition out of weddings, because let's face it, it's like the best boot camp for anything that you want to do. Like, you have to shoot in all different kinds of lighting scenarios, different types of people. You have to make magic in a dark room full of sweaty dudes with no light, right? Like,
I mean,
yeah, and you have to make magic out of that. Like, you're going to be great at it. But I do, and let me know if you agree or disagree with it. I feel like that part of our industry, the photography industry, is still really, really closed. It's hard to get in unless you know someone specifically.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm totally sure of it. And I don't really know much about that, like that category of photography, but like I definitely don't ever see anything of it. And like, it seems much more competitive. So
very competitive. Like, how do you find pricing or quotes? Because I could see, it'd be so cool to see with Let's Go. And I've only ever seen one other workshop or conference even integrate a little bit of commercial photography into more of like a wedding industry conference. But it'd be so neat to start picking a few people that are really cool and bringing them in, because I feel like wedding photographers, like, yes, we love weddings, like that's what we're there for, but also transitioning. Like, I don't know if I'm 50, am I going to be cool and hip enough to photograph? Like, I'd be like, watch out for my hip. I don't know.
Yeah. And like, it's funny that you kind of mentioned that, because that's why I like every like year after year after year, I keep having Jacob Loafman come back, because like, I mean, yeah, he's like a wedding photographer, but we all know him as like just amazing, this like artistic like genius. Yeah. And so I've always like carved out a chunk of time during the workshop for him to lead these creative shoots, and like they're always wacky and like bizarre and, you know, in terrible light and just, you know, like just in a messy room, and he's helping teach people like how to make incredible things, you know, in less than desirable situations. And people come away from that and they're like, I learned the most from this time with him. And like the challenges, like he will lead like a photo challenge and people will be so scared. Like, I don't want to do, you know, you have 2 minutes to make an image and people won't even want to do it. And they'll come out and be like, wow, that was incredible. Like, I'm glad I stretched myself.
I have a couple questions from our Instagram. There's one that I think would be really interesting. So I think as a female entrepreneur, I think as a mom, a working mom, I think it's always a little bit scarier than it is for the dads. And I'm sure some people will disagree with me, but I think as an entrepreneur and a mom, that must have been terrifying. This is how I feel, because I'm in my mid-30s running a business, and like, if I want to be a mom, are my clients and my peers, are they going to think that I'm going to take my work less seriously? Am I not as invested in them anymore? Like if I was a dude and I was to become a dad, I'm sure everyone would just congratulate me with a cigar or something. But like, how did you feel, and how do you juggle being a mom and a successful entrepreneur? And what would be your advice to people that are wanting to be moms and they're female entrepreneurs and they're terrified?
First of all, I love the way you say mom.
Oh, this is my Canadian.
Yeah, adorable. How do I juggle it? I don't juggle it very well, if I'm being honest. Like, this is full transparency. Like, I'm a mess most of the time. This is like why having a team is very helpful. I think that like the surprise of like, I knew that I was pregnant. I knew I was about to have a baby, but the surprise of the divorce, like right after she was born, was like, there was no way to prepare for that. And so I never, like in a million years, would have thought I was going to be like a single parent, let alone just like a parent, a single parent, and running two businesses. And so I think like, so I will say, before I ever even considered having a kid, I knew that I wanted my businesses to be semi-self-sufficient. Like, or is that the right? Like, I knew that like they needed to be established enough that like it wasn't the same, because we all remember like the first year of our business, right? It was like 80-hour work weeks. Like
it's your entire life. Do your friends even know what you look like anymore? Maybe on social media. That's about
yeah. So the first few years of the businesses, both businesses, it was my entire life. Like I put everything I had into my businesses. And when we, finally decided to have a kid, it was like, okay, I knew that my businesses were going to be okay. Like I had the systems in place. I had the help in place. And so if somebody really wanted to be a parent and to try to, work that into their life and their lifestyle and their lifestyle as a independent business owner, my advice would be that is to just like wait a little bit until you are really solid with your systems, like when things can kind of just like run in the background all the time, it's like you're never going to be as stressed as like the very beginning when you're just trying to figure it all out. And and that's like also too why workflow for me has been so important. And I preach.
Yes, do it.
I preach workflow till I'm like blue in the face. I have a course with India where we talk all about workflow. I have an entire course on like my 1 hour wedding edit, like how I can edit a wedding from beginning to end in an hour. And that was a system that I had been working on and like perfecting before I had a kid. And I'm damn like happy that I did, because sometimes I only have an hour, to work on stuff like when the kid's napping or whatever. So, I would just say like really invest in your education and get your systems in place, and just know that like you're gonna have to multitask a lot.
I wondered how it affected the direction of your career by not just like the divorce and how that affected how you feel, maybe connect or don't connect with weddings, but being a mom and how that's maybe changed what you thought you were going to do. You can still have ambition and you can still have drive. You can still be like this amazing, successful entrepreneur, but did what you looked for in success, did that change specifically?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Because there was a time where I believed that busy was success, and that having 30 weddings was that's what made me a success, to fill up my books, you know, like, oh, my books are filled for the year. Like, and now it's the complete reverse. Like now it's like, okay, how little do I have to do to make the same amount of money so that I can spend more time with my kid? Because like it's just me. And so I don't want to be working 40, 50, 60, 70 hours a week. Like I want to know exactly what I need to do to get through this stage where she's still she's two and she's still at home with me all day, every day. So yeah, I'd say that like my version of success has changed in that way. And then now I'm going like, that's the how do I put it? Like the least amount of work that I can get away with doing at this time. And I know like when she goes back or when she goes to school and, you know, the routines change, like I'll have way more time. I mean, like we're business-minded people. Maybe I'll start something completely new at that time. Like who knows?
That's an entrepreneurial spirit. You're like, you can't help but see opportunity.
I'm always going to work for myself. In fact, when she was born, I was like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to start like a business where like I make a baby product? Because like I just in like, you know, having things with her, I'd be like, oh, this thing sucks, or this doesn't work, or like somebody should invent this. I'm like, is it going to be me? Am I going to be the one? Like,
I love that. I love that so much.
Everything's a business. Like I can't not, you know, see everything as a business. So I guess that's how that's changed for me, is now it's like, she is my number one. And I just want to spend the time with her. And I feel so lucky to be able to do that as like a self-employed person, because I get these days with her. You know, I don't have to put her in daycare and go to work during the day. Like that's success to me. That's what it is right there. So
I love that. I think people like to say that I'm so busy. I forget who told me, but there was someone that was getting their hair cut and they were on Instagram, working on Instagram for their business. And then they took a selfie that's what they were doing. And the reaction of the person that told me was, how is like, that's not something you have to be proud of, or like that you're like, look how great you're doing. You can't even have a haircut without being in the moment of your haircut and like not working. Like you should take time for yourself.
Absolutely.
You shouldn't have to work 80 hours and hustle everything. Like, yeah, you work hard. You still like you deliver what you promise. You have a standard, but it doesn't mean you have to kill yourself. It's not something to be proud of.
I definitely don't think like that there's any reward for working yourself to death. Like
There is not.
I mean, yeah, you get to brag in your Facebook groups that you booked 100 weddings, but like at what cost, you know?
Are you crying in the tub every night over your pizza and glass of wine?
So true. Yeah. And like, you know, it's funny, like you bring up the hair thing too, because like in those days, like I didn't even know what self-care was, you know, but now I realize like I need to have time for that, because between the businesses and like being a single mom and like the time I get to myself is like precious. I am not going to be on my phone doing anything for work.
Here's one from one of our readers is, what is one of your absolute favorite memories from Let's Go?
I don't even know. Like they're just all so good. I mean, just like we have this kind of tradition now where we like pop the champagne like at the end of the shoots and just get those big like gallon bottles from Costco and just pass it around. And like, that's always a ton of fun, is to just like, you know, share drinks with each other. And I don't know. I really loved, a year ago, we started doing like more intimate kind of breakout sessions and like kind of more one-on-one type stuff. And that's been absolutely incredible. I don't know if I could pick just one. I will share a fun story though, because this was just like the most hilarious thing that's ever happened. So Laura Babb from UK, she came in November, and she's absolutely incredible. She runs the Snap Photography Festival in the UK, and she's also has trained to be like a mindfulness and meditative coach. And her and I shared similar stories. We went through divorces at the same time. Like, we really bonded during that time that we were going through some things. And I invited her to come speak, and she led this mindfulness activity. We all got up super, super early in the morning. This was in November, and we were out on the beach. It's like misty and foggy, and we're all just kind of like silhouettes, you know, all like 50 people in a circle on the beach. And this exercise that she did was like, you could take, I don't remember how, like you could take like 50 steps from where you started, and each step that you would take, you needed to like take a picture or document like where you were in the space, right? So like feel the ground beneath you, feel the air in your, like on your skin, and document that experience somehow.
Oh, I love that.
Right? So before you could take the next step, you needed to like feel that moment. So it was all well and good, and everybody was in their head, like really just feeling it, right? Like we were just like, it was cold, like we just, the elements, I mean, it was really an experience. But what happened was, I'm standing there with Laura, and there's 50 like ghostly figures that are very slowly just like taking over this beach. And this guy with his dog walks by, and the dog is like scared as shit. Like, we look like ghosts. He's got his hinds all up. He's like barking and growling at us. And we're like, oh my gosh, we look like a cult. Like, we literally.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And that dog was so scared. The person was like, who are these freaks? Laura and I were just laughing so hard. And that just was like, that to me is like, we're all just weirdos. Like, we are these creative freaks.
So good.
Like, I don't know. That was just like a really memorable experience that I will never forget. Because everybody that was on the beach was just like, who are these psychopaths?
Like, these are my people.
These are my people.
My last one that I have for you is, this is now I'm rolling back to the business after the ghostly figures on the beach, is what are the best investments you've made in your business?
Investments in myself, honestly. Time, workshops. I mean, I hate to sound salesy, but like, it's totally true. I mean, investing back into yourself. Like, I'm never going to say like, oh, a piece of gear or, oh, a software. Like, at the end of the day, like, if you're healthy and you're happy and you're like thriving, your business is going to thrive. And I think it's so like, we are our brand. Like, we're everything. And like, if we're suffering, if our mental health is suffering, like, our business is going to fail. And the only way that will fail is if we quit. And like, I think that the more you can invest in yourself, like, the less your chances are of, you know, burnout and quitting later on. So I guess that would be my advice.
Is there one final thing, like a piece of advice that you'd want to give to your fellow creative entrepreneurs?
Just be yourself and don't give a fuck what anybody else thinks, because like, you're doing it, and you're doing it well, and just treat yourself kindly, and none of that like negative self-talk. Just be good to yourself, I think.
I love so much of that. There's like 3 things in that one sentence. I'm just like, I just want to like expand. I won't, because we'll go on forever, but like, literally just the one part I have to say is, you're fucking doing it. You're doing it. How many people have these dreams and they want to and they don't? Like, we all have self-doubt. We all wonder if we're doing the right thing. We can all be like a little bit scared at different times. Having that little bit of fear and like double the amount of excitement is a really great mixture to have, but you're fucking doing it. That's a small club, my friend. Yeah.
So true.
That's awesome.